In the previous lessons, we've surveyed the history of Homo sapiens from the cognitive revolution 70,000 years ago up to the present day. In the last lesson of the course, I want to take a look at the potential future of Homo sapiens. What is going to happen to our species in the coming century or two? In all likelihood, our species is going to disappear. We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens. In the medium future, within a few decades or a couple of centuries at most, Homo sapiens will disappear. Now, I don't think that our species will annihilate itself in some nuclear or environmental catastrophe. Rather, our species will disappear because it is going to upgrade itself into a completely different kind of being. As we saw in the previous lessons, there have already been many far-reaching revolutions in history: political, social, cultural, and technological revolutions. Yet, through all these revolutions, for tens of thousands of years, one thing remained relatively constant, and this is the humans themselves, Homo sapiens itself. This is a great constant of history. The sapiens mind and the sapiens body have been the constant base on which all societies, all identities, all religions have been founded. Our world today is very different from the world of, say, biblical times. But people in ancient Jerusalem in the time of the Bible had the same basic bodily and mental abilities that we have today. They, the people in the past, experienced the world in roughly the same way that we experience it today. And this is why we still find much of interest in the Bible, or in the philosophy of Plato, or in the writings of Confucius, because they were written by people just like you and me. This, however, is about to change. The next big revolution in history will of course transform the economy and politics and society and all that, but it will also transform our bodies and our minds, and it will replace Homo sapiens with a very different kind of being. When we think about the future, we usually think about a world in which people like you and me will enjoy better technology. They will have light-speed spaceships. They will have laser guns. They will have intelligent robots and so forth. This is what we usually imagine. But the truly revolutionary potential of technology is to change people and not just our tools and our weapons. It's not the spaceships that are going to be different in the future. It's the beings that travel in the spaceships that will be different. Now, how exactly will Homo sapiens upgrade itself into a different kind of being? At present, there are three main methods that humans seem to be able to use in order to upgrade themselves. The first method is biological engineering. The second method is cyborg engineering. Cyborgs are beings that combine organic with non-organic parts. These are cyborgs. And the third method for upgrading Homo sapiens is by engineering inorganic life, life which is not based at all on organic parts. I will now try to examine briefly these three methods so that you understand what we are talking about. So the first method that might be used to upgrade Homo sapiens into a new kind of being is biological engineering. Biological engineering is any deliberate intervention on the biological level, for example, implanting a gene or taking some drug, which is aimed to modify the shape, the capabilities, the needs, or the desires of an organism. There is nothing new about biological engineering per se. People have been using biological engineering for thousands upon thousands of years in order to reshape themselves and in order to reshape other organisms, like dogs and cows and horses and so forth. A simple example of biological engineering is castration. Humans have been castrating bulls for perhaps 10,000 years in order to create oxen. Oxen are less aggressive than bulls and are therefore easier to train and to dominate and to make them pull wagons and carts and plows and so forth. So this is biological engineering. You take a bull who is very aggressive, you castrate it, you get an ox, which is much more easier to manipulate. Humans have similarly used castration on themselves, castrating young men or children in order to create soprano singers with wonderful voices, or in order to create castrated eunuchs who could safely guard the harm of the Sultan or of the Emperor without any danger that they may do something with the Sultan's women, because they can't. So this is the advantage of castrating men. But so this is biological engineering, and it's not new in itself. What is new is the degree, the abilities of today's biological engineering. Recent advances in our understanding of how organisms work, down to the cellular and molecular levels, have opened up before us possibilities for biological engineering which previously were simply unimaginable. For example, today we can not only castrate a man, which is relatively simple, but we can use all kinds of hormonal and surgical treatments in order to turn this man into a woman, to change his sex. This is far more ambitious than just castration. And that's not all. Look, for example, at this photograph. This photograph was published in 1996, almost 20 years ago, and when it appeared, it sent shockwaves around the world. It caused a very huge storm. Now, this is a real photograph of a real mouse. It is not something that somebody created on Photoshop. It's a real mouse. What you see here is a very real mouse on whose back scientists have implanted the cartilage cells which they took from cattle, from cows. Now, the scientists were able not only to implant these cow cells on the back of the mouse, but also to control the growth of the new tissue and to shape it into something that looks very similar to a human ear. And they can shape it into all kinds of other shapes that they want. This process is now used in all kinds of laboratories and hospitals in order to try and manufacture artificial ears and other artificial organic structures that can then be implanted in humans, for example, somebody who lost his ear. Now, this photograph is a kind of eerie echo of the Lion Man statue from the Stadel cave that we encountered in the second lesson of this course. In the case of the Lion Man from the Stadel cave, humans imagined a combination of a human and a lion. Now, 30,000 years ago, people could think about such a hybrid creature, half human, half lion, and they could make an ivory statue of such a creature, But nobody 30,000 years ago knew how to actually produce a living being which is half this, half that. Today, humans are acquiring the ability to actually produce such beings with the help of very sophisticated biological engineering. This mouse that you see here is a real combination of parts taken from cattle with a mouse, with the body of a mouse. Of all the kinds of biological engineerings that we see today developing, the one that attracts the most attention is genetic engineering. Genetic engineering is based on taking genes from one organism and implanting these genes in the DNA of a different organism. For example, today, we know, and it is often done, we know how to take a gene from a jellyfish that glows in a green fluorescent light and to implant this gene in a rabbit or a monkey, which then also start to glow in a green fluorescent light. It has been done in monkeys. It can be done with humans too. We have now the technology to take this gene from a jellyfish, to implant it in a human DNA, and you will get a human being that glows in a green fluorescent light. It hasn't actually been done because of all kinds of ethical prohibitions, but technically we know how to do it. Another example concerns the genetic engineering of all kinds of microorganisms. The bacteria E. coli has been genetically engineered by scientists to produce biofuel. Lots of biofuel in order to try and solve the energy problems of the world. The same bacteria, E. coli, and other species of microorganisms and fungi have also been genetically engineered to start producing insulin and thereby lower the cost of insulin and the cost of diabetes treatment. Another interesting example is that scientists extracted a gene from a kind of Arctic fish that lives in the Arctic Ocean and inserted this gene from the fish into the DNA of potatoes in order to make the potatoes more resistant to frost and to cold conditions. Genetic engineering is used increasingly not only on microorganisms and jellyfish and potatoes, it is also used on mammals. For example, every year the dairy industry, the milk industry, suffers billions of dollars of damages due to a disease called mastitis. Mastitis is a disease that strikes dairy cows, the udders of dairy cows, and causes all kinds of problems there. Scientists are currently experimenting with genetically engineered cows that the milk of those genetically engineered cows contains a biochemical called lysostaphin. And this biochemical attacks the bacteria which cause mastitis, and the scientists hope that in this way the problem of mastitis will be solved by genetically engineering these cows, these dairy cows. Geneticists have already managed to engineer also other mammals like mice and rats. They've managed to engineer genius mice that display not only different physical qualities, but genius mice that display that have improved cognitive abilities, improved memory, improved learning skills. Now, how do you know, how do you measure the cognitive ability of a mouse? It's not so difficult. You have all these mazes that scientists give mice to solve. You put the mouse in the maze, and there are all kinds of levels of difficulty for the mazes, and you see that the genetically engineered mouse is able to solve a normal maze much quicker than a normal mouse. And the genius genetically engineered mouse is able to solve very difficult mazes that normal mice cannot solve. So we have here evidence of a real cognitive change brought about by genetic engineering. Now, if you can do such things to mice, you can certainly do them to Homo sapiens as well. The abilities, the needs, the desires of Homo sapiens, just like those of mice, have a genetic basis. And the sapiens DNA is not much more complex than the DNA of mice. The sapiens genome is only 14% larger than the genome of mice. That's practically the same level of complexity. So there is no technical reason why we couldn't start engineering superhumans, or why we couldn't create entire new species of humans different from Homo sapiens. In the medium range, perhaps in a few decades or a century or two, genetic engineering and other forms of biological engineering might well enable us to make far-reaching changes, not only in our physiology and in our immune system and in our life expectancy, but they will also enable us to make major changes to our intellectual and emotional capacities. If genetic engineering can create genius mice, there is no obvious reason why it couldn't create superhuman, genius humans. And if you remember, the cognitive revolution that turned Homo sapiens from an insignificant African ape into the master of the world did not require any noticeable change in human physiology. It did not even require a change in the size and external shape of the human brain. Apparently, the cognitive revolution resulted from a few small changes in the internal structure of the sapiens brain. So perhaps another relatively small change in the human brain brought about with, say, genetic engineering would be enough to ignite the second cognitive revolution, to create a completely new kind of consciousness and to transform Homo sapiens into something very, very different from us. Something different from us, just as we are different from the Neanderthals. Now, we are still not there, don't worry, we are still not there in 2013. But there seems no insurmountable technical gap separating us from the production of such superhumans. The main obstacles on the way to the creation of superhumans are not technical. The main obstacles are ethical and political objections that slow down the research on humans. The research on mice is much more advanced than the research on humans because of these ethical and political considerations. And no matter how convincing these ethical and political arguments are, it is very hard to see how they could hold back the next step in the process indefinitely or even for very long. Especially because what is at stake here is the possibility of prolonging human life indefinitely, giving humans indefinite lifespans, living forever. What is at stake is conquering all kinds of diseases like cancer and Alzheimer and so forth. And what is at stake is upgrading our cognitive and emotional abilities. So it's unlikely that these ethical and political objections will indefinitely prevent the research from going forward. What would happen, for example, if scientists managed to develop a cure for Alzheimer's disease that at the same time, as a side benefit, could also dramatically improve the memories or the cognitive abilities of healthy people? Would any government or any combination of governments would be able to stop the relevant research? And if this cure, this technique is indeed developed, would any government or any police be able to limit the usage of this invention only to cure Alzheimer's patients and to prevent healthy people from using this technology to acquire super memories and all kinds of amazing cognitive abilities? It is unlikely. So this is the first method by which Homo sapiens might upgrade itself quite soon into something completely different: biological engineering. In the next segment of this lesson, we will examine two other methods that we might use to upgrade ourselves: engineering cyborgs and engineering non-organic life. In the previous segment, we discussed one method by which Homo sapiens might upgrade itself into something completely different, and this is biological engineering. Another method to upgrade humans is cyborg engineering. Cyborgs are beings that combine organic and inorganic parts, such as a human with bionic hands. In a sense, all of us are cyborgs these days, since our natural senses and functions are supplemented and improved by devices such as eyeglasses and pacemakers and even computers. Computers perform more and more tasks previously done by our organic brains and memories. However, in the near future, this process is likely to go much, much further. We are likely to start having inorganic devices connected directly to our brains and to our nervous systems. Devices that will be inseparable from us and that will change our abilities, desires, personalities, and identities. One example is the bionic ear. We already have functioning prototypes of bionic ears. A bionic ear means an implant that absorbs sound wave through a microphone located on the outer part of the ear. The implant filters these sounds, identifies human voices and other important sounds, and translates these sounds into electric signals that are then sent directly to the central auditory nerve and from there to the brain. Such a bionic ear can not only enable deaf people to start hearing, but it can also enable healthy people to acquire amazing new hearing abilities. The same can be done with bionic eyes, bionic noses, and even bionic arms and legs. You see here before you a picture, a real picture, of Jesse Sullivan holding hands with Claudia Mitchell. Jesse is an American electrician who lost both his arms up to the shoulder in 2001 in an accident. Claudia has lost one arm in a motorcycle accident. Both of them now use bionic arms. The amazing thing about these bionic arms is that they are operated by thought alone. Neural signals arriving from the brain are translated by microcomputers, very small computers, into electric commands, and according to these commands, the arms move. When Jesse or Claudia want to move their right arm, they do whatever any normal person unconsciously does. When I want to move my arm up, I don't know, I just think about it, it moves. Exactly the same thing Jesse and Claudia can now do with their bionic arms. They just think about it and the arm moves. At present, these bionic arms are a very poor replacement for the organic originals. But they have the potential for unlimited technological development. Bionic arms, for example, in the future, not in the distant future, in the near future, can be made much more powerful than the organic arms, even of the world's boxing champion. Moreover, bionic arms have the very big advantage that they can be replaced every few years or upgraded whenever a new model appears on the market. They can also be detached from the body and operated at a distance. We are used to all the parts of our body being connected here as part of a single body, but this is just how organic bodies work. Once you have organic hands and organic eyes and ears and so forth, there is no reason why they all the time have to be connected and be in the same room or the same city or even the same continent or planet. Scientists at Duke University in North Carolina have recently demonstrated this with rhesus monkeys. They took rhesus monkeys and implanted in the brains of the monkeys electrodes. The electrodes gather signals from the brain and transmit these signals to external devices that control arms and legs and so forth. The monkeys were trained to control detached bionic arms and legs through thought alone. One monkey, called Aurora, learned how to control only with her mind, only with her thought, a detached bionic arm, while simultaneously moving her two organic arms. So Aurora is now like some Hindu goddess. She has 3 arms. And her arms can be located, at least the third arm, can be located in a different room, in another city, in another continent. Aurora can sit in a laboratory in North Carolina, scratch her head with one hand, scratch her back with another hand, and simultaneously steal a banana in New York with the third hand, which she controls by the mind alone. And as far as she is concerned, this is a hand of hers. She feels it like a hand. Another of Aurora's companions, a rhesus monkey called Idoia, became very famous in the year 2008 when she thought-controlled a pair of bionic legs which were positioned at the time in Japan from her chair in North Carolina. She sat in North Carolina with her brain connected through the internet to these legs in Japan, and she walked in Japan with the thought, even though the legs in Japan were 20 times the weight of Idoia's entire body. Another very interesting development concerns the possibility to mind read, to read the content, the thoughts in the mind of a person. There is a very severe disease which is called the locked-in syndrome, because people who suffer from it are kind of locked in. People who have locked-in syndrome gradually lose nearly all their ability to move all parts of their bodies, but their cognitive abilities to feel and to think and so forth, they remain intact, and they become locked inside their bodies, unable to do anything. Now, people suffering from this terrible syndrome have up till now been able to communicate with the outside world only through very small eye movements. They can still make very small eye movements, and this is how they signify yes or no and things like that. However, there are now studies in which patients that suffer from this syndrome had electrodes implanted in their brains, like what they did with the monkeys. And these electrodes also, they gather signals from the brains. And scientists are making an effort to translate these signals not only into movements of bionic arms and legs and computers and so forth, but also to translate them into words. If the experiments succeed, it means that locked-in syndrome, people who suffer from locked-in syndrome would be able to speak directly with the outside world, with the computer as a translator, translating their brain signals into words. And also, if this succeeds, it means that we will have at our disposal the ability to read the thoughts in the mind of another person directly, whether he wants it or not. Just think what the CIA, for example, could do with such an amazing invention. However, of all the projects currently under development in the field of cyborg engineering, the most revolutionary project is the attempt to create a two-way brain-computer interface that will allow computers to read the electrical signals of a human brain while simultaneously transmitting signals that the brain can read and interpret and understand. Now, just imagine, what if such direct interfaces are used to directly link a brain to the internet, so you can surf the internet just with your consciousness, not with fingers and eyes? Or to directly link several brains to the same computer, and thereby linking all of them together and creating a sort of interbrain net. What might happen in such a case to things like human memory, human consciousness, human identity, if the brain can have direct access to collective data banks and collective memories? In such a situation, one cyborg could, for example, retrieve the memories of somebody else, not to hear about them, not to read about them in a book, not to imagine how this person must have felt, but to directly remember the memories of somebody else as if they were his own, or perhaps her own. What happens to concepts like gender identity when minds become collective, and when a man can actually remember the memories of a woman? Nobody knows the answer to these complicated questions. What is quite clear is that such cyborgs would no longer be humans. They would not even be organic creatures, organic animals. They would be something completely different from us and from any other animal. They would be so fundamentally another kind of being that we cannot even begin to grasp the philosophical, the psychological, and the political implications of such an eventuality. So this is the second method by which Homo sapiens may upgrade itself into some other kind of being, by using cyborg engineering. The third method for creating some kind of new entities that will take our place in the world is by engineering completely non-organic beings. Cyborgs still combine brains with computers, all kinds of organic parts with inorganic parts, but there is a possibility of creating completely non-organic beings without any organic parts. The most obvious example is computer programs and computer viruses that can undergo independent evolution and can develop and learn new things independently. Computer scientists today are trying to create learning computer programs that can learn by themselves, that can evolve completely independently of the person who initially programmed, who initially created this program. The first such independently learning program would be created by a human, but once it exists, it can start evolving in new and very different directions, which neither its maker nor any other humans could ever have predicted. A prototype of such a program and of their evolution already exists, and it is called a computer virus. As the computer virus spreads through the internet, the virus is replicated millions upon millions of times, all the time being chased by predatory antivirus programs that try to destroy it, and all the time competing with other viruses and other programs for the limited space in cyberspace. Now, what happens if one day, when the virus replicates itself, some mistake occurs, some computerized mutation? Perhaps the mistake, the mutation, occurs because the human engineer that initially programmed the virus programmed it to make random replication mistakes every now and then. Perhaps the mutation occurs due to some random error, not pre-planned. If, by chance, the new virus, the modified version of the virus, is better at evading antivirus programs without losing its ability to invade other computers, then this new version of the virus will spread quickly through cyberspace. And if so, the mutant viruses will survive and reproduce better than the previous versions. And as time goes by, cyberspace will become full of new viruses that no human engineered, viruses that undergo non-organic evolution. Now, are these living creatures? Is this life? It depends on what you mean by the term life and living creatures. But what is certain is that there is here a new pathway, a new method for evolution, a new evolutionary process which is completely independent of the organic world, of the laws and limitation of organic evolution. Now imagine another possibility. Suppose you could take your brain and back it up on a computer and then run it on the computer. Would your computer be able to think and to feel like a sapiens? And if so, would it be you or would it be somebody else? What if computer programmers could create an entirely new but digital mind composed of computer code and complete with a sense of self and memories and so forth? If you ran such a program on your computer, would it be a person? If you delete it, could you be charged with murder? This sounds very, very hypothetical, all these questions, but we might have the answer to these questions much sooner than most people realize. In 2005, scientists launched the Blue Brain Project. And the Blue Brain Project hopes to recreate a complete human brain inside a computer with electronic circuits in the computer emulating the neural networks in the brain. Whatever all the electric signals in the brain that this neuron sends to this neuron, so they hope to replicate it inside the computer with electronic signals from this circle to this circle in the computer. Now, the program's director has claimed that if the project receives proper funding, within a mere decade or two, we could have an artificial human brain inside a computer, an artificial bionic brain that could talk and feel and behave much as a human does. Not all scholars agree that this is possible, because many scholars argue that the mind works
in a manner which is very different from the way that computers work. So it will never be possible to create a mind inside the computer. There's a lot of argument about it. However, we should note that just a few months ago, in April 2013, the European Union decided to make the Blue Brain project the flagship of European science in the years to come, and to donate 1 billion euros to finance this project. Again, 1 billion euros, not 1 million, 1 billion. So at least the heads of the European Union, of the science department of the European Union, they think that there is serious possibility of this Blue Brain project succeeding. These then are the three main methods by which Homo sapiens might upgrade itself into some other kind of being, with biological engineering, with cyborg engineering, and with the engineering of non-organic life. If any of these methods succeed, if this really occurs, what would be the social and the political and the ethical implications of such a thing? We will discuss these social and political and ethical implications in the next segment of this lesson. In the previous segments, we discussed three main methods by which Homo sapiens might upgrade itself into some other kind of being: biological engineering, cyborg engineering, and the engineering of non-organic life. Presently, only a tiny fraction of the potential of these methods has actually been realized. Yet already today, in 2013, we are in the middle of an immense social, political, and ethical revolution. More and more spheres of activity are being shaken out of their complacent ways. Lawyers and judges need to rethink issues of privacy and identity. Governments need to rethink matters of healthcare and equality. Sports associations and educational institutions need to redefine what fair play means and what achievement means. And pension funds and labor organizations need to readjust to a world in which 60 might well be the new 30. They must all deal with the ethical and social problems which are raised by bioengineering, by cyborgs, and by inorganic life. Take the issue of privacy, for example. Mapping the first human genome took 15 years and $3 billion. Today, you can map your DNA within a few days at the cost of a few $100. There are many companies on the internet that offer this service. This opens the way, the easy mapping of DNA, it opens the way to a revolution in medical care. It opens the way to personalized medicine that matches treatment to your own DNA. With this prints of your DNA, the family doctor can tell you with greater certainty than ever before that you yourself face high risk of liver cancer, whereas giving your DNA, you don't need to worry much about heart attacks because you're very unlikely to have a heart attack. The family doctor could also determine, based on your DNA, that a very popular medication that helps 92% of the population is useless for you, and that instead you should take another pill, which is dangerous to most people, but for you it is just perfect. However, this easy ability to map your DNA may open the way to other things as well. For example, would insurance companies be entitled to ask to see your DNA scan and to raise premiums if they discover that you have a genetic tendency to reckless behavior? So they say, okay, you have this gene, you pay double. Or for example, when you apply for a job, could your future boss ask that instead of faxing him your CV, I don't want your CV, fax me your DNA. That's much better. I want to see your DNA, not your CV. Would the employer be entitled to ask for such a thing? And would the employer be entitled to favor somebody else, to give the job to somebody else because he likes her DNA more than he likes your DNA, because you have here some suspicious gene which is often connected with all kinds of problematic behavior, so he prefers her? Would you be able in such a case to sue for genetic discrimination? Or would this be acceptable? Why not? If we have DNA, why not use it? Such dilemmas are dwarfed by the ethical, the social, and the political implications of the Gilgamesh project, the project to give humans eternal life, and by the potential new abilities to create superhumans. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, government medical programs throughout the world, national health insurance programs, and national constitutions worldwide recognize that a humane society, a good society, ought to give all its members fair medical treatment and to keep all members of society, as far as possible, in relatively good health. That was all very good and well, as long as medicine was chiefly concerned with preventing illness and with healing the sick. What would happen once medicines becomes more and more preoccupied with enhancing human abilities, giving humans new abilities instead of just healing sicknesses and illnesses? Would all humans be entitled to such enhanced abilities? Or would there be a new superhuman elite that only they have these wonderful new abilities? Our modern world today prides itself on recognizing for the first time in history the basic equality of all humans. But we might be poised to create the most unequal society that ever existed on earth. Throughout history, the upper classes always claimed that they are smarter, they are stronger, they are better than the underclass. But they were usually just deluding themselves. In the Middle Ages, the kings thought they were very superior to the peasants. But a baby born to a poor peasant family was likely to be as intelligent as the crown prince, as the son of the king. However, today, with the help of new medical and scientific capabilities, the pretensions of the upper classes might become an objective reality. They might really be smarter and stronger and better than the underclasses and everybody else. And we need to realize that this is not science fiction. This is science. Most science fiction plots describe a world in which sapiens, identical to you and me, enjoy superior technology, such as spaceships that travel in the speed of light and laser guns. And the ethical and political dilemmas which are central to these science fiction movies and books, They are concerned with people like you and me. They are taken from our world and merely recreate our social tensions and our emotional dilemmas against a futuristic backdrop. But the real potential of future technology is to change not the spaceships, but Homo sapiens itself, including our emotions and thoughts and desires. Science fiction rarely describes such a future because an accurate description is by definition incomprehensible to people today. Producing a film about the life of some super cyborgs in the future is like producing Hamlet to an audience of Neanderthals. They won't be able to understand what's happening. And similarly, we can't understand a real story about the future. And what should be emphasized is that the future masters of the world, if all these predictions come true, will probably be much more different from us than we are different from Neanderthals. Whereas we and the Neanderthals are at least human and organic, these future beings are going to be godlike and probably inorganic, at least in parts of their bodies. This is why more and more scholars say that what really awaits us in the future is the singularity. Now, what is the singularity? The singularity is a point in which our world of meaning collapses completely. A point when everything we know about ourselves and about the world, all our hopes and fears and so forth, our very identity, they will all become irrelevant. We cannot imagine this point or anything happening after this point. It is singular. It is not comparable to anything else within our field of experience. The term itself, singularity, is taken from physics. Physicists define the Big Bang as a singularity. The Big Bang was a point when all known natural laws, including space and time, did not exist and did not function in any way that we can understand using our current models and knowledge. Hence, anything that happened before the Big Bang is also meaningless to us. The very notion of time had no meaning during the Big Bang, so it is meaningless to speak about things happening before the Big Bang because there is no time. So this is a point of singularity in the past, the Big Bang. We might fast be approaching another future point of singularity in which our known world of meaning will simply collapse. Everything happening beyond that point is incomprehensible to us, and it's useless to try and imagine it or talk about it. Unless some nuclear or ecological catastrophe intervenes, the pace of technological development is so rapid that we will soon come to the point when Homo sapiens is replaced by completely different beings who possess not only different physiques, but also different cognitive and emotional abilities and experiences. This is something that most people, most sapiens, find extremely troublesome, extremely disconcerting. We like to believe that in the future, people like us will travel from planet to planet in fast spaceships. We don't like to contemplate the possibility that in the future, beings with emotions and identities like ours will no longer exist, and our place in the universe will be taken by alien life forms whose abilities dwarf our abilities, alien life forms, our descendants, who would look on us in the same way that we look at Neanderthals. Now, it should be emphasized that all this is, of course, just speculation. Nobody really knows what will happen in the future. It would be surprising if all the forecasts given today, and if all the forecasts that I mentioned in the last few minutes would be realized in full. History teaches us again and again that what seems to be inevitable and just around the corner may never materialize due to all kinds of unforeseen barriers. And that, in contrast, other scenarios which nobody foresaw, they will actually happen. For example, when the nuclear age began in the 1940s with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and later on, when the space age began, when the Soviets launched Sputnik to space, and the Americans landed a man on the moon, then everybody began fantasizing and forecasting that in the year 2000, people will live in colonies on Mars and on the moon and on Pluto, and all kinds of fantasies and forecasts about the nuclear world of the year 2000. Very few of all these forecasts actually happened. We don't live today in colonies on Mars fueled by nuclear energy. In contrast, nobody in the time of Hiroshima and Sputnik managed to forecast the internet, which in many respects is much more amazing than living on Mars in some nuclear colony. So you should take most of what I said in this lesson not as reliable forecasts for the future, but more as a stimulant for your imagination. What we should take very seriously is not the exact forecasts, but the basic idea that the next stage of history will include not only technological and organizational transformation, but also fundamental revolutions in human consciousness and human identity. And these could be revolutions so fundamental that they will call into question the very term human. Whatever happens after the revolution, it won't be human anymore. Now, how long do we have until this happens, until the singularity? Nobody really knows, of course. Some experts say that by the year 2050, less than 40 years from now, there will already be superhumans living on Earth. Less radical forecasts speak about the next century, or 2 centuries, or 3 centuries. But from the perspective of 70,000 years of Sapiens history, what are a few centuries? We are very, very close to the end of Homo sapiens, to the end of history, and to the beginning of something completely different. Whether it will take a few centuries or a few decades, what's becoming very clear is that we sapiens had better start thinking about these matters. The most important question facing humankind today is, what do we want to become? This question is called the human enhancement question. In what way do we want to enhance humankind? And this question dwarfs all the debates that currently preoccupy politicians and scholars and philosophers and ordinary people. After all these debates today between various nations and ideologies and religions and classes will disappear along with Homo sapiens. If our superhuman successors indeed function on a different level of consciousness, or perhaps will possess something beyond consciousness, which we can't conceive, then these beings, it's very doubtful that they will have any interest in Christianity or Islam, that they will organize themselves in a communist or capitalist way, or even that they will have genders like us, males and females. All this will disappear. Most people prefer simply not to think about this possibility. Even the field of bioethics prefers usually to address another question. Most bioethicists, people who are interested in the ethics of all this biotechnology and so forth, they usually ask themselves not what do we want to become, but what is forbidden to do. Is it acceptable, for example, to make genetic experiments on living human beings? Is it okay to do experiments on aborted fetuses or on stem cells? Is it ethical to clone sheep? Is it ethical to clone chimpanzees? What about humans? Now, all these questions are important. I don't want to say that they are not important, but it is naive to imagine that we might simply hit the brakes and stop scientific projects that are upgrading Homo sapiens into a different kind of being. It's impossible to completely stop such kind of projects because they are inextricably meshed together with the human quest to overcome disease, to overcome death, the Gilgamesh project. Ask scientists who are studying the genome, or ask scientists who try to connect a brain to a computer, or try to connect a mind inside the computer, why they do all this. Why do you want to do this? 9 out of 10 times you will get the same standard answer. We are trying to connect a brain to a computer. We are trying to create a brain inside the computer. We are trying to decipher the secrets of DNA in order to cure diseases. This is the standard answer. And this is the standard answer because nobody can really argue with it. This sounds wonderful to cure diseases. Why not? Even though the implications of breaking the code of the DNA or the implications of creating a mind inside the computer are far, far more dramatic than curing this disease or that disease, this is still the standard justification for all these scientific projects, because this is justification that convinces everybody. Nobody can argue with it. And this is why the Gilgamesh project, the attempt to overcome disease, old age, and death, is the flagship of science. It serves to justify everything that science does. Whenever there is doubt, we just think about that and we say, okay, go on. So this is why we cannot stop the march of science and technology. The only thing we can try to do is to somehow influence the direction they are taking. We have, therefore, to start asking ourselves not only what is forbidden to do, but we need to ask a far more important and difficult question. What do we want to become? And since we might very soon be able to engineer our desires as well, the real question facing humankind today is, what do we want to want? Those who are not frightened, those who are not spooked by these questions, what do we want to want, probably haven't given this question enough thought. With these troubling questions, what do you want to want, we come to the end of this course. Before we say goodbye, I want to stress once more that what we learned during this course, the Brief History of Humankind, is not the truth. It is just one possible story about the history of humankind. If you asked 10 different historians to give this course, you would most probably get 10 very different stories.
So you shouldn't accept everything you heard in this course as the truth. It is better to take it as an invitation to explore history by yourself. My aim in teaching this course was not so much to convince you that this or that particular theory is true, but rather to raise important questions in your mind about the history of humankind, about the past, present, and future of humankind. So I hope that you leave this course with more questions than you have when you entered it, and that you leave this course with a desire, with a wish to study and to learn more about our history. In addition, I hope that you leave this course feeling a bit more uneasy than when you started it. Uneasy about the many questions to which we humans have no clear answer yet. Uneasy about the many problematic events that happened in the past. And uneasy about the direction history may be taking us in the future.